Hello everybody and welcome to Sao Paulo for another round of the International Racing Series. We are here for Season 15 and as it always does, short qualifying will get underway. 18 minutes for drivers to set their best lap times and then the 50% race. Now it's looking a bit cloudy over Sao Paulo here today as drivers are getting out of the pits. DBK43 retires from the session. And now we're going to start to see some drivers exiting out of the pit lane. One of the Hasses, I believe it is, or one of the Cadillacs coming out just now. And that will be one Ben Huskins in the Cadillac Formula 1 team car. Rain predicted for the race, as I've been informed in the chat, so that's going to be very interesting. First time this season that we're going to be experiencing rain, and in these new 2026 cars, how will they react? A little bit more slower, but Sao Paulo is one of those tracks where you have to be pinpointing everything, and it's such a small racetrack that everything comes at you thick and fast. DBK43 retiring from the qualifying session, so we'll be starting 22nd as Ben Huskins will start his first qualifying lap. 3 sets of tyres that each of the drivers have, and judging because it's a wet race, we're going to see 3 full stints in qualifying. Huskins into turn 1 in the Cadillac, new for this season, or new for this year even. We have IRS F1 saying pink eye's a bottle job. Well, we'll see what happens here today. Let's just check everything's okay. Good. Just okay. Ben Huskins meets an Alpine who gets out of the way. Entering now into the final sector. He's got an Audi in front of him of Kuro. And now heading out to the final corner, deploying all of the battery. And then S mode when available. And Huskins will set the benchmark and it will be a 109.212. Who will be the next one? Solar goes quicker in the V car with 08.540. Then Commodore across line, he goes even quicker by just 10 thousandths of a second. 108.530. Luca goes up into third place with 108.796. Dan with a 110 as LS34 in the Cadillac with a 108.929. Currently in the second row provisionally. We have one of the Haas cars coming across the line. That's Joshua with a 109.6. And then an Alpine. Next one too is Kenterum who sets a 110.3. One of the Ferraris coming across the line now. That's Donster. And he goes up into 7th. Jesek goes quickest with a 108.276. Putting his authority right out of the gate. Goes 3 tenths quicker than Commodore. James in the Haas goes with a 106.6. 108.6. Lansdale has invalidated. He won't be setting a lap time as LB44 goes into 13th. We have Calvin in the Alpine going up into 8th place with a 109.1. So you can choose. Some drivers opt to go for a second lap. Some drivers choose to pit immediately after the first flying lap. There is enough time to do at least 2 laps on the same tyres. And then go out for a third set. But that's our first flying laps done and dusted with relatively quick ease. 108, it's one of the shortest times on the Formula 1 calendar. The fastest being Austria in Spielberg. But yes, Jesek on provisional pole position ahead of both. Never mind. Jason in the Audi goes with 108.175. He goes quickest above all of them, and he's on provisional pole position. 2 laps on those compound tyres, as Jesek goes again for another lap in qualifying. Let's see if he goes quicker than his personal best. Through Sector 1, it's 33 thousandths improvement. He's going to need at least 1/10 in the bit to go up onto provisional pole. That's Jason right in front of him, getting out of the way of the racing line. Coming through Sector 2 now. The most technical sector in this racetrack. A few third and second gear hairpins await you. Sector 2, is it quicker this time as well? No, he's slower. Adding both sectors 1 and 2. Will he complete this lap, coming out of the final corner? No. He's abandoned it and he's gone back into the pits. How about Elmo of the Void? His Jesek's teammate, will he also be coming into the pits? No, he continues on, which means that he's on the faster lap time, but how quick is it? It's enough to go into 4th place. James, just ahead of him, went up into 3rd, and James and Elmo have set the exact same lap time of 108.498. Pink Eye Penguin goes up into the 2nd row with 108.335. So these drivers, except for James and Elmo, set these additional times on the same compound tyres. Pink Eye Penguin setting his first lap of qualifying in the Aston Martin. As I believe that was Kuro going into the top 10 with 108.951. Jacelyn is going again, and this is 3rd lap on the same set of tyres. He thinks that the tyres are strong enough to continue on for another qualifying lap, and he is improving in the first sector by at least 1/10, but through this technical part, that's when the tyres will start to scream a little bit more. And is he improving? Yes, he's improving even further. A 1/10 improvement in the first and second sector. And coming across the line, Jason could go into the 108 deads, maybe even the 107. He goes only 14 thousandths quicker, but that's stomping it even further. Ran out of battery towards the end, but with 3 lap old tyres, you can't say that that's not well done. Pink Eye Penguin is going again as well. In the Aston Martin Honda. Currently in 3rd place, needs about 1.5 temps, 2 temps to go up onto provisional pole, and he's 76 thousandths up on this first sector. Now, Pink Eye Penguin is going to meet a little bit of traffic in terms of Mercedes. He gets out of the way. Pink Eye Penguin not improving in the 2nd sector. But now deploying all the power. He's got the Ferrari in front of him that may give him a little bit of slipstream. Ferrari goes and gets behind the Honda, but now Pink Eye Penguin across the line does improve by 76 thousandths of a second. Made it all up in Sector 3. On towards the front row, beating Jesek by 18 thousandths of a second. Jesek on brand new tyres now, 15 thousandths after Sector 1. Meanwhile, we got Commodore and Solar all on flying laps as well, although Solar has abandoned his first one. Jesek coming to the end of his 2nd set of tyres, and he's not improving unless it can all be made up on this straight. Jesek across the line for McLaren, and it's not an improvement. 72 thousandths down on his personal best. Solar starts his flying lap. Commodore coming to the end of his. He's 2.5 temps up on his personal best. 2.5 tenths could propel him up onto the second or front row here for V-Carb and Commodore across the line. It will be the second row. 108.279, 3 thousandths behind Jesek, and he's going to be wanting a little bit more from the car. Solar has abandoned his lap again. He's invalidated. Jason on an outlap for his second set of tyres. Drivers going around constantly setting lap times. Josh completing his second flying lap, goes up into 16th place with a 1.5 temp improvements. Then it's the two McLarens of Jesek, who will be starting his lap now, and Elmo of the Void, who is completing his lap. Elmo comes across the line, and it will be an improvement by 1.5 temps. He goes up into 5th place ahead of James. Luco starting his lap. Where's Jason? Jason coming through the first couple of corners to start his second flying lap. Oh, I was going to say first flying lap on his tyres. Dan starting his flying lap now. Jesek with a 1.5 temp improvement. If it carries on like this, he will be on provisional pole position ahead of Jason. But now, coming across the line, the McLaren hugs the wall, and it will be provisional pole position for the McLaren. Jesek goes on provisional pole position. Solar comes into the pits. He's done on this flying lap attempt. What can Jason do? He's invalidated. So he won't be setting a lap time on this occasion. Elmo starts his flying lap. Luco already completed one. He's in 6th place ahead of James. LS34 invalidated. Calvin is up by 3.5 tenths of a second. He could put him up into the top 10 as he comes through the final couple of corners. Caution sector 2, that's one of the Aston Martins getting out of the way. That's Luco. As BRD Calvin has abandoned this lap despite being up. Now Jason has gone again, and he has improved very slightly in sector 1. 30 thousandths of a second in sector 1. He's going to need a little bit more to beat out Jesek. It's very close margins, especially of a lap time this short, of a track this short, as he comes to the end of sector 2. 1 temp improvement now. He's got a car in front of him, and the Audis are working together. Kuro is pulling on Jason, and this will improve his lap time quite exponentially. The drag reduced, and Jason will come across the line, and he does go into the 107s. An 07.813 helped along by Kuro68, his teammate, and that's probably done and dusted in terms of the fight, unless the two McLarens can work together. Elmo and Jesek are currently 2 and 3, but they're fighting with not fighting with each other, but they're in their own ventures, solo ventures here. Jason on provisional pole position by just over 3 tenths of a second with the help of Kuro. Hella High goes up into 12th place ahead of Calvin by improving on his personal best by 2.5 tenths of a second. No drivers currently setting lap times. Kuro, not to say ruined his, but he did help along his teammate, but this current lap is null and void, and he'll go again on these sets of tyres. We've got 3 minutes left of qualifying, so there's a bit of downtime for everybody to go on their out laps. Kuro is starting his probably final lap of qualifying. Commodore has just started his, although he's slow, so he's going to be waiting and go around this racetrack again. Alex Lansdale, who won on his debut in Canada a few rounds ago, is now currently 14th place in the Williams car. And he's improved in Sector 1 by 28 thousandths of a second. I believe that was hella high, with a strong lap time to go up into the top 10, a 108.798 in the Ferrari. Jason, Jessic, Elmo, all in the pits. Top 3 in the pits. Pink Eye Penguin is out on an out lap. Commodore out on track at the moment. So is Solar, as Lansdale's completing one of his final flying laps, and he's improved in Sector 2 by just 5.5 tenths of a second. That could pull him up into the top 10 very easily. Now coming to the end of his lap in the Williams car. And Alex Lansdale goes up into the top 9. 9th place, 6.5 tenths of improvement. Commodore starts his flying lap. Solar in the middle of his. 89 thousandths after Sector 1, coming to the end of Sector 2. And it's almost 3 tenths worth of improvements. 3 tenths could very well be enough to go into the second row. But it's very tight in terms of margins from 3rd to 5th. Solar across the line. And it will be just behind his teammate, a 108.302. Jacelyn, Jessek, and Elmo out on flying laps now. Pink Eye Penguin has abandoned his. He'll go again. He's got the battery up. Commodore will go around the racetrack once again. Luco is improving by slight margins, just under half a tenth of a second. Luco comes across the line, and it will be not an improvement by 1/1000th of a second. That's going to disappoint him slightly. How are Jessica and Elmo doing? Jessic coming through Sector 2. He's going to need 3 temps. 3 temps is a lot around, especially here, but 1.5 temps already from Sectors 1 plus 2. He's going to hope that that V-Carb was a little bit closer to him than it was before. And the V-Carb is kind of pulling him along here. Jessic in the McLaren will come across the line. Will it be enough? It's not enough. A 2-tenth improvement. Brilliant, but it's not enough. Jason comes into the pits. He's done for qualifying. Elmo, will he improve here to get ahead of his teammates? No, 18 thousandths down. Pink Eye Penguin not improving in Sector 1. He's going to have to go through Sector 2 and improve even further. More than he probably would have wanted. Pink Eye Penguin does improve a lot in Sector 2. 2 tenths of a second could propel him above Elmo and perhaps even Jessic if he can stick under the slipstream of his teammate Luco, who he is. Pink Eye Penguin across the line, side by side with his teammates, and Pink Eye Penguin does go up into 3rd place ahead of Elmo, a 108.054. And that, I believe, is a qualifying Joshua completing his final lap attempt. And across the line, currently in P16, he goes up into 15th with a 2.5 tenth improvement, beating out Dan. Jason, with the aid of his teammates, pulls himself onto pole position. Jessic in 2nd place, Pink Eye Penguin in 3rd, Elmo in 4th, the 2 V-Carbs in 5th and 6th are Commodore and Solar, Luco in 7th, James in 8th, Lansdale in 9th, and Kuro rounds off the top 10. And so that's how it was. The top 10 split by 9/10 of a second. And below the top 10, we have Ben Huskins, Hella High, LS34, Calvin, Joshua, Dan, Donster, Kenterim, LB44, Remy, and this start, and DBK, who didn't do qualifying. But it is a wet race. Depending on what setups everybody has chosen, you can imagine the grid being all shaken up. Parc Ferme rules do exist. So let's see which drivers had a wet setup and which drivers didn't. It depends how long the rain is in the race. But it was cloudy conditions in qualifying. So that will tell a tale. It's sunny. So what I was saying about it, don't matter for now. The rain is coming towards the end of the race as a last-ditch surprise, but all clear skies and all sunny conditions for the start of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And drivers will have a couple of minutes to tweak setups, change strategy, and change fuel levels, and do whatever they need to do. So the starting tyre choice will definitely depend on when is the rain coming, and currently it's the rain at the end of the race. Do drivers gamble by starting on the hard compound tyres and taking them as long as they can in order to avoid a stop in between, a potential stop starting on the mediums if the rain does come about 3/4 into the race? Can they last? Well, we'll see. It's going to come at lap 26. Well, that's brilliant, isn't it? So that's like towards the end. Will it really affect it? I don't really know. Well, so yeah, they lose too much time. If it was coming a little bit early, then the hards would be a good shout, but no. So, all sunny here. So 22 cars out on track here today. DBK 43 starts from the back after having to serve a penalty that was given after the race. A qualifying ban, I suppose it was. Says like lap 33 from Pinghai Penguin. Interesting, okay. So different times, different laps. That's quite a discrepancy. 4 laps difference. Or lap from lap 29 to lap 33. Well, we'll see what happens when the race comes and goes. So it was Jason who took pole position ahead of Jessic, Pinghai Penguin in the second row, ahead of Elmo, Commodore Solar. Both V-Carbs round off row 3. Luco in 7th, James in 8th, Lansdale in 9th, Kuro in 10th place. Jason says, if we get no safety cars, I think we'll make it with no rain. Or it could glitch, and it could be lap 10. Honestly, the game does weird things. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, formation lap is starting, and it's pretty hazy in Sao Paulo today. Audi on pole position, McLaren second, Aston Martin third. Drivers will take this short lap to warm up the tyres, and meanwhile, the formation lap is beginning. We'll see what tyres everybody has started on. So, the top 10, apart from Kuro, starting on the mediums. Ben Huskins and Alex Lansdale DSQing immediately from the start of the formation lap. Those tyres will be cold. Possible race strategies, hard to mediums, or mediums, medium softs. So, Kuro, Dan, Donster, Kentrim, LB44 and Remy all starting on the hard compound tyres. That means that 6 out of the 22 drivers are starting on hards, the rest on mediums. Best of luck to every one of the drivers out there. As the formation lap is coming to a close. Dan has left the session, so he won't be taken to the start here. The final car coming to a stop. As we will see 5 lights ready to go. And we do get underway. It's McLaren versus Audi heading into turn 1. Jezek looks to have a good start into turn 1. Jason will have to fight through turn 2. There's a car spinning off in the background, but Jezek has taken the race lead ahead of Jason. Big Eye Penguin will take the opportunity. Jason could go from first down into third after a couple of turns. Heading down into this next corner here. Jezek in the race lead. Big Eye Penguin in second. Jason in third. As we see Commodore and Solar in 5th and 6th, and Ben Huskins and James going side by side. Ben Huskins gaining 4 places from where he started in 11th, and he goes up into the top 7. The car going off in the background, I believe, was Luco in the Aston Martin off turn 1. But yes, hard to mediums for one-stop mediums, medium soft, but remember the chance of rain coming to the end of this race. As we see James versus Ben Huskins, and now we're seeing Ben Huskins attack Commodore. Huskins versus the V-Car. Side by side, Ben Huskins and V-Car make contact. It's a 3-car incident, 4-car incident, and Commodore has lost his front wing. Lansdale up into 7th place as a VSC has been called. Chaos in towards the 3rd sector, and the V-Car of Commodore will have to come into the pits to repair damages. Every driver now will have to head to the Delta as Commodore gets a 10-second time penalty for speeding the pit lane. The Sao Paulo pit lane is one of those pit lanes, very notorious, where the racing line lies to you, where you have to brake. So you have to brake a lot earlier than the racing line tells you if you do put on racing line in this game. So we're under VSC. There's quite a fair bit of a gap between Solar and Ben Huskins. Ben Huskins involved in a collision with one of the vehicles as they were going side by side, heading into the 3rd sector. Lansdale climbs up into 7th place from 9th. LS34 up 8 places. We'll see, actually, how many drivers have gained. So the best gainer was Ben Huskins, and Donster, starting from P17, going up into 12th place. Dissart from 21st to 14th as we get the restart underway. And we could see Solar versus Elmo heading into turn 1. Solar in the V-Carb, Elmo in the McLaren. They head down towards turn 1. Elmo holding the middle of the racetrack. Solar will have to be patient for a better move. It could be into turn 4. Solar deploying all the battery, and also straight mode, which everybody gets. But he hangs onto the back now. Lansdale behind Huskins. 2.1 seconds between Huskins and Lansdale. If you look at the track map, there's quite a fair bit of a gap between Huskins and Solar. So Jason has lost 2 places since the start of this race, and Jezek taking up the race lead. Pink Eye Penguin also going up to 2nd to Jason's expense. The top 5 will come across the start-finish line to start lap 4. As we see Jason act for a move as LS34 gets ahead of Ben Huskins. And Elmo and Solar go side by side. Solar off the racetrack, rejoining ahead of the McLaren. Solar and Elmo into turn 4, and Solar will keep 4th place on track. Meanwhile, in the background, LB34 versus Joshua in turn 4, side by side, the X and the McLaren versus Haas for 13th place, and LB44 getting ahead of Joshua. Luco trying to regain places, goes around the outside of Dissart, will try to keep it there, and Luco does go up into 15th place. Meanwhile, Lansdale getting up a position ahead of Ben Huskins. LS34 also getting an advantage to get ahead of his teammates, and now it's LS34 versus the Williams. LS34 in the Cadillac switches to the inside using the battery. Lansdale chooses to save it as LS34 sets the fastest lap of this race. 6th place currently. He's got 1.9 seconds now to catch up to Elmo of the Void. Meanwhile, the battle for the race lead is brewing up. Jessic versus Pink Eye Penguin. Pink Eye Penguin chooses to wait for another opportunity. Kuro versus Calvin. They swap positions into turn 4. Luco getting ahead of LB44. He started in the top 10 and now he's quite a fair bit behind the others, but he will have time to catch up. 36 laps in total. We've done 5 laps so far. Starting the next lap now. LS34 is already starting to catch up to Elmo. Now it's 1.1 seconds, but on turn 1 it was just 1.9. Hella high, dropping down several places in the Ferrari. Is now down in 11th place and could be passed behind his teammates. Pink Eye Penguin gets ahead of Jessic, and Jessic under pressure from Jason. Jason versus Jessic into the first corner. Side by side, the two front row starters going side by side through turn 2 and exiting turn 3. Jessic under supreme pressure versus the Audi, but no moves into turn 4. Oh, that's down the inside for Solar versus Jason. The Audi versus V-Carb. Side by side. Solar tried to catch Jason off there, but unsuccessful. And now, starting these laps come thick and fast. DRS straights. Again, there's 2 around here, heading into turn 1, exiting out to turn 3 to 4. Caution in sector 3, that's one of the Ferraris spinning around. That's hella high in the Ferrari, who now rejoins on the track, but now will be down way far behind. Now he's in 19th place. Meanwhile, Jason versus Jessic continues on. Jessic does have the help of the Aston Martins, punching the air ahead of him. Top 5 at least 4 attempts from each other. At least intervally. Hella High comes into the pits and exits out of the pits in last place behind Kenterum. Elmo of the Void starting to drop behind the rest of the top 4 here. He's now 6 attempts away from Solar as Lansdale versus LS34. Lansdale goes up into 6th place ahead of the Cadillac. Luco getting ahead of Donster via the DRS, not DRS, the straight mode and overtake. Dissart and Joshua going side by side into turn 1. Joshua on the inside now. Dissart will have the outside, and Williams stays ahead of the Haas. Oh, Sola losing the rear, and that's going to drop him from the pack slightly, but he will regain that. It's not too much lost. They're starting to pull away from the gap behind, as you would expect with a train of this magnitude. The top 5 pulling away from Lansdale, which he can't do much about. There's no one ahead of him. The punchy end, in fact, he's going to get passed by LS34 into turn 1. No fights into turn 1. Seems to be a joint agreement to try to their best to catch up to Elmo. But now it's almost 3 seconds, the gap between the top 5 and then 6th place. Kuro currently in 9th place, the sole runner on hard compound tyres in the top 10, gets ahead of Ben Huskins. The hards starting to activate a little bit more as the mediums start to drop off. Pink Eye Penguin ahead of Jessek by now 0.5 of a second, which climbs, which goes down to 3.5 tenths with the help of some battery from the McLaren. Lap 10 out of 36. We're heading into 1/3 of this race being completed, as Elmo drops out of the overtake mode. The 1 second gap now has been breached to 1.1 seconds. And Jason is getting ever slow, slightly closer, if very patient behind the McLaren now. Because as soon as you go for a move, a risky move, you risk, as DBK retires from the session. That's between himself and James. Oh no, that's not James. Joshua, I think it is, the one on the cat. Oh, wow. So, an instant heading out of turn 3 on towards a straight. The Haas is also missing a tyre, and he's retired from this race as well. Both cars retiring, and that's... Oh, dear. Never mind. It's fine. The safety car... that was just a bug, I hope. As now we see Pink Eye Penguin. It's a full course safety car now. The full blown as everybody now comes into the pits. Jacelyn versus Jessek side by side in the pit lane. And does the Audi actually get ahead of him? You're allowed to do this. You're allowed to overtake in the pit lane. There's nothing in the rules that says that you can't. And has Jason jumped ahead of Jessek in the pit lane? Yes, he has. Jason up into 2nd place, ahead of Jessek in the pit lane. Sola in 4th. LS just comes out behind Jason as Remy gets a 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Commodore doesn't come into the pits. Remember, he also has a 10-second time penalty, but he will come out now. I believe it will be 8th place behind Lansdale. So a safety car now. Everybody, apart from Kuro, Donster and LB44, coming onto the medium hard compound tyres. Kuro starting on the hard compound tyres, of course, switching to the mediums to get that different... You have to pit onto a different tyre rule, basically. So does Donster and LB44. Now these tyres should go to the end. 25 laps on these tyres is achievable, to say the least. Especially under a few laps on the safety car. 20 laps probably. Also, plus with the added fact that rain might be coming. We'll see exactly what happens. But yeah, Joshua and DBK43 all both retiring from this race. Those are our first two retirees. Haas and Red Bull. Got a few stragglers to catch up to the back of the safety car before we get restarted. James and Cantrell being both of them. Kuro comes into the pits for a second time to swap onto a new set of hard compound tyres. He sacrifices track position, but by coming into the pits and going back out on the hards again, he will remove any sort of semblance of risk by continuing on to the mediums. So, Commodore and Remy both have 10-second time penalties because they sped in the pit lane. Nobody else has. But Commodore's 10-second time penalty will impact him quite a fair bit, to say at least, if there isn't another safety car. Safety car at the end of this lap, relatively quickly, lap 12. We've only done about 2 laps under the safety car, and now Pink Eye Penguin will set the pace for the restart. And when does Pink Eye Penguin choose to go? The safety car has to come into the pits first, and it has done now. And Pink Eye Penguin goes, and he's caught Jason a little bit off guard there, but no more than Jacek. Jacek versus Solar heading into turn 1. Jacek has the feel to go defensive versus Solar. Solar goes around the outside, which will switch to the inside for turn 2. They go side by side. A touch from the side pods from Solar, but it will still be Jacek in third place, at least for now, heading into turn 4 in the McLaren. And no changes there in the top 4. Meanwhile, Huskins versus Calvin, and Huskins gets ahead of Calvin, and Calvin under pressure from Luco in the Aston Martin. LB34 versus Dan, they swap positions as we see Dissart versus Hella High. In the next couple of corners, the Audi of Kuro going deep, and now will be under pressure from James. Commodore dropping down several places once again. That's the Alpine also going off with Calvin. Commodore down into 10th place. More positions changing as Calvin rejoins us the racetrack with a missing front end plate. So he'll have to come into the pits to get some repairs on that Alpine. As we see James versus Kuro. Kuro getting ahead of Dan. I know, Dan versus Kuro, as Calvin gets a 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane and retiring from the session. Meanwhile, up in front, Jacek versus Solar heading into turn 4. V-Cub waits. Caution sector 1, that's because of the Alpine retiring. As you see Donster drop down the field and now is ahead of Remy, but Donster does have missing front end plates on both sides of his front wing, so he's going to have a lot of downforce here as well. Heading into the start-finish straight. Immediately after the safety car restart, it's Pink Eye Penguin ahead of Jason, ahead of Jacek, both positions swapped during the pit cycle. Solo in 4th place with LS34 in 5th. Elmo in 6th place. Lansdale in 7th. Huskins in 8th. Luco in 9th. And Hella High in 10th. Meanwhile, in the background, it's Commodore versus LB34 into turn 1. The Mercedes of LB44 to the inside, which will switch to the outside. They both go side by side. The exit, Commodore on the hard compound tires, LB44 on fresh mediums. But Commodore will get ahead. Commodore, those hard compound tires will start to go off as Donster gets a 3-second time penalty. Elmo versus LS34. Elmo was ahead of LS34 during the pit lane, but ever since the restart, now dropping behind the Cadillac as we see yellow flags because that is LB34 facing the wrong direction. And LB34 will rejoin the racetrack in 18th place. Was fighting out with Commodore, but now Mercedes will have to climb up several positions in order to get a decent result here. Meanwhile, starting lap 16. Jesek still ahead of Solar and in fact is catching up to Jason. Let's see Commodore to the inside of Hella High. The Ferrari versus V-Carb. Hella High for a 3-second time penalty. Commodore with 10 seconds after speeding in the pit lane. Commodore to the outside. Donster gets a 10-second time penalty for speeding into the pit lane and retiring from the session altogether. Commodore up into 10th place now, ahead of Hella High. Rain is forecast come to the end of this race. It's supposed to come in between lap 29 onwards, supposedly, and that time will be even shorter due to that safety car. When it will come will be shorter. Anyway, Jesek heading into turn 1. And now we could see Jason versus Pink Eye Penguin perhaps into turn 4, although it does look like Jason is going to hold off on the battery usage for now on this straight. LS34 starting to join the party a little bit more. 5 cars turn into 6 cars in this train. They're all pulling away from Alex Lansdale, who's dropped back to 1.5 seconds behind the top 6. 3 seconds further back is Luco, who finished the first lap in 20th place, all the way down last, qualifying the top 8 an instant after the first corner, dropped in up down to last, and he's back up to where he qualified, 8th place. So good on him. He's done very well there after only lap 17. Ben Huskins though, pressuring from behind, 8/10 further back. But as we get onto the main straight once again, pit straight, DRS, the longest DRS straight. DRS? Oh dear. S-mode does overtake. It's been about 8 months. Anyway, heading into turn 1 now. As Elmo versus LS34. The McLaren getting ahead of the Cadillac. But for how long, might you say? There's no slipstream, barely any slipstream from the cars ahead for Elmo, but LS34 waits for a better opportunity to go for the move. Still a train here. We're halfway through the race now officially. Lap 18 out of 36. And 7 laps down these hard compound tyres. They should go to the end. Bar any rain, of course. As we see, Lansdale drop down several places behind both Luco and Huskins. Losing 5 seconds in Sector 2. A mistake there for the Williams because he was in no man's land. 3 seconds ahead of Luco and not closing up to LS34. So Lansdale heading into turn 1 will try to overtake Huskins around the outside for the Williams. Huskins defends on the inside, locking up for the Cadillac. Pushes them both out wide and out of position into turn 2. The Cadillac, though, will make a successful defense versus the Williams, but for how long? Overtake boost and S mode for both cars, except for Lansdale. Okay. Overtake for Lansdale, S mode for both cars, but no moves into turn 4. At least you're not. Yeah, you can see Lansdale practically pushing along the Cadillac. But still not able. Hoskins feels the need to go defensive into the second sector. Lansdale versus Hoskins into turn 1. Hoskins on the inside once again, locking up for the Cadillac. But the Williams is just that little bit further ahead and catches out the Cadillac. Oh, Lansdale loses it on the curb, but he manages to keep it going without too much penalty. And Lansdale will carry on in 9th place. Lucky to continue with that half spin. Meanwhile, Jessic versus Jason, that was getting very close. Below a tenth of a second between those two cars as we see a caution in Sector 2. That's one of the Hasses. Oh, I think it was one of the Hasses. No, it's Hoskins in the Cadillac going off wide. And Hoskins rejoins the racetrack, now down in 13th place. Its drivers getting close to one another, trying to make moves, but then dropping back after dispelling all their battery. Migrating host. Interesting. Okay, Heather High has left the session. Hoskins gets a 10-second time penalty for speeding into the pit lane and retiring. He's done. It was looking good for him, but that spin out of the exit turn 4, not too happy for the Cadillac. Not happy days for Cadillac, I meant to say. Anyway, the race continues on with caution in Sector 1 after Ben Hoskins retired from the race. It's still a train for the top 6. No one going for moves that could jeopardize their personal race as Heather High rejoins the session. Moving on to the pit straight once again. Jason deploying his overtake boost. But still just waiting behind Pink Eye Penguin. This is the closest now that Jason has been to Pink Eye Penguin. Does he finally go for the move into turn 4? Or will he continue to save the battery? He doesn't go for it. Meanwhile, Kuro comes into the pits on these hard compound tires, which is an interesting choice considering everybody else is continuing on. Those are fresh hard compound tires, and he's decided to swap onto the medium compound tires. Oh, he's swapping a front wing. A front wing has been damaged in the midst of a battling, and he's got to replace that. Unfortunate for Kuro. Meanwhile, yellow flags in Sector 2. And I believe it might be Hella High, who now just rejoins the racetrack just behind Williams of Dissart, and now Hella High under pressure as Remy versus Kendrum go side by side into these hairpins, and Remy trying to figure out a way past the Alpine. Meanwhile, Solar versus Jessek, as we see just up ahead, the Audi maybe going for a move, doesn't go for it. This seems like a theme here as Jason goes to the inside of Jason, finally going for the offense, but Jessek can't make it successful. Meanwhile, Remy versus Caterham. Not Caterham. As Commodore sets the fastest lap on this race on those medium compound tyres. Surprisingly, I'd like to say barely anyone getting 3-second time penalties around Sao Paulo at the moment. Usually, Sao Paulo is one of those racetracks where time penalties are ever so prevalent, as we see Solar versus Elmo locking up from the McLaren, and now he's locked up a fair bit too much, battling the V-Cub, and could be under pressure from LS34 as Kuro gets a 3-second time penalty. But as mentioned, yeah, nope. Everyone behaving themselves with barely any warnings, or hope so, and time penalties. Not too common. And obviously Solar versus Jessek into the next corner, trying to put a wheel in versus the McLaren. It's just nothing in there. But this battle has caused Jessek to drop back even further from Jacelyn. At least for now. Coming to the overtake boost zone. Deploying the power as LE34 gets a 3-second time penalty. James coming into the pits on those 14-lap-old mediums. The time has come for those tyres. They won't last to the end of this race, and he'll be switching on to a new set of medium compound tyres. He starts on those hards. They pitted at lap 11 due to the safety car. As Dissart versus Kentrum getting past Dissart via an overtake boost pass. But Dissart looking to fight back on the exit of turn 3, but has got zero battery to play with as James gets ahead just of both of them. Very quick pit stop, it was needed in order to not be stuck behind both Kentrum and Dissart. He's currently in 9th place, but he's got a 24-second gap ahead of him with some fresh clean air, and immediately he's starting to pull away from those 16-lap-old hards on that Alpine. LS34 in the Cadillac, trying to get ahead on the McLaren. That's one of the Red Bulls of Remy going off to the inside line to prevent any sort of mishaps. Got a blue flag. 27 out of 36. Midway through. Still zero signs of rain for now. It's all sunny skies still around Sao Paulo. Pink Eye Penguin has now got few cars ahead of him to get past. Both LB44 and Dan in the two Mercedes just up ahead, and he needs to get by without too much trouble. LB44 pulls to the inside line to avoid any sort of hassle and lets all the cars go except for Remy. Remy gets past LB44. Elmo of the Void is now dropping back to now over a second behind Solar. Bad news of that is that he's not going to have any overtake. Just trying to creep back into that overtake zone. And does he have it or does he not have it? Well, he's got it, I believe, and just about. Just creeping into behind there, but LS34 just right behind him. Now it's a 4-car train with Elmo dropping back further. Caution sector 2, and I believe that's one of the Audis. Yes, it is. It's Kuro. Off track. Lansdale comes into the pits for a 10-second time penalty for speeding the pit lane. The game lies to you. The racing line is wrong. And Lansdale has to serve a 10-second time penalty come to the end of this race. He's pitting on 18-lap-old hard compound tyres, and he's swapped onto the softs to go to the end with 7 laps remaining. Is it a masterclass or is it an odd one? I mean, bar everything, he would have finished 8th place anyway. It's worth the gamble. He was quite far ahead of the Haas, and he wouldn't have lost any points by coming into the pits. So he just comes out ahead of James. Lansdale now has got 24.9 seconds ahead to Luco. Keep an eye on that delta, barring any sort of rain, tires going off, whatever could happen. But rain, still no signs of coming, with it still being relatively sunny out onto the racetrack. So that means that these 4 cars will start to make moves normally when the cars are in this trains, because it's a stalemate in terms of the battling. The proper sword versus shield fighting will happen towards the end. In fact, it started now between LS34 and Elmo. LS34 getting ahead of Elmo. They're in the battle of their own. They're 1.4 seconds behind the top 4. Jessic closing that gap up to Jason is now vulnerable to Solar. But Solar also doesn't have that much battery to work with as well. Lansdale sets the fastest lap on those fresh soft compound tyres. Lansdale does get a 3-second time penalty straight after Dissart comes into the pit lane on those 20-lap-old hard compound tyres. And he swaps onto a fresh set of softs. Meanwhile, Kuro versus Hella High heading into turn 4. The Ferrari just ahead of the Audi, and Solar versus Jesek at turn 1 and turn 3, and a bit of contact between the V-Carb and the McLaren. Solar goes up into 3rd place. Caution in sector 2, that's because of one of the Williams, I believe, of Dissart going slowly to let by the other cars. Elmo gets a 3-second time penalty, which will probably guarantee him down in 6th place. Although the track is starting to get a little bit cloudy, I don't know if we're going to see any droplets of rain anytime soon. It's not cloudy enough, it's not dark enough to see any sort of rain coming down. And that is one of the McLarens who is going slower than expected. He's now 5.3 seconds behind LS34, and the McLaren is struggling on those 21 lap old hard compound tyres. Lap 33 out of 36, Hella High drops behind Kuro as Dissart gets a 3-second time penalty. There's 2 separate fights in the top 4 now. The battle for the lead and the battle for 3rd place. LB44 gets a 3-second time penalty. 22 laps on these hard compound tyres. For the top 7. And these are the next laps that we're soon going to see some actual passes in the top 4. It's been a stalemate for the majority of it. Last lap, we had Solar getting ahead of Jesek. But now, we should start to see Pink Eye Penguin versus Jason if they can get close enough to each other. They start getting a 10-second time penalty for speeding to the pit lane. He's retired from the session. He's done. ...23 laps on these hard compound tyres, bolted on for the top 7 ever since lap 11 during the safety car. They've lasted this long, everybody trying to conserve their tyres to the best of their opportunity for a last dash sprint to the end. The penultimate lap of this race, lap 35 out of 36, begins now. The top 4 split by 1 second. You can see Jason is starting to be a little bit racy versus the Aston Martin heading into sector 2. But now, when can we see the move? Let's see the battery levels. We've got about 70, 85 at the apex of this corner. The Audi slightly less. But Xing out onto the straight now. They're both on practically equal battery level onto the main straight, but the Audi does have the overtake boost. Hella High gets a 3-second time penalty. And now onto the last lap. This, if there was any time for an overtake, it would be now. Jessic gets a 3-second time penalty. Solar gets a 3-second time penalty. They both get 3-second time penalties at the same place. And Jessic and Solar, now there's a proper fight for position, but they've got to start thinking about LS34. Jessic versus Solar. Jessic gets ahead of Solar. They both make contact at the final lap. Jessic and Solar, they have an instant with each other. Jessic gets off scot-free, and Solar's missing a front end plate. LS34 will take 4th and perhaps 3rd after time penalties are applied to Jessic. Meanwhile, for the race lead, it's still Jason versus Pink Eye Penguin as Jason tries to figure out some way past of Aston Martin. Will it be done side by side on this last straightaway? Jason versus Pink Eye Penguin, the battery being deployed, the overtake boost versus the Aston Martin. It's the Aston Martin versus Audi coming across the start-finish line. The Audi, will it have enough? But versus the Aston Martin, no. 91 thousandths of a second. Pink Eye Penguin wins ahead of the Audi. LS34 finishes ahead of Solar and Jessic. They both swap positions at the final lap. LS34 will take his first podium of the season, a debut podium, I think. He hasn't raced here before. Well done to the Cadillac. Solo finished 4th place after an incident with Jessic, who finishes in 5th. Elmo in 6th. Luco in 7th. Lansdale finishes in 8th. As the rain now just starts to begin to pour. Lansdale, with that 10-second time penalty, will finish behind James. James finishes in 8th place, and Commodore will finish in the points, albeit 1 in 10th. The rain came a little bit late to have any sort of impact, and Hella High will come up the hill ahead of Kuro, at least on the track, because via time penalties, I believe it will be Kuro in 11th. Oh, never mind. Kentrim, I think, ahead of both cars here. But that will be it for this race. The rain came ever so late to have 0 impact in this race. But Pink Eye Penguin versus Jacelyn, it was split by 91 thousandths of a second, and Pink Eye Penguin wins once again. So, Pink Eye Penguin starting from 3rd will finish with a win. Jason drops down 1 place from pole position. LS34 starting from 13th finishes onto the podium. Well done to him. I think the Cadillac LS34 is my driver of the day. A very impressive race from start to finish, despite starting outside the top 10. Solar finishes in 4th. Jessic, after starting in the front row, finishes in 5th. Elmo in 6th. 7th goes to Luco. James in 8th. Lansdale with the fastest lap on those soft compound tyres finishes in 9th. And Commodore with that final point. And that will be all for this race. Thank you very much for watching. An interesting race, a train from start to finish practically, but a bout of a little bit of rain coming to the end. If only we had a bit of a slower time to get used to it. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you all next week. Or, let me just double check the schedule. Bahrain. And that is for sure not going to have any rain. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye.